talk about training this morning. Brian Gracon's with us, Brian Gracon Associates. Brian, always good to talk with you.
Good morning, Dave. Great to be with you.
Now, Brian, we've talked a lot about training, specific training, sales, marketing, and a lot of other aspects of business. I suspect that every employee, to some extent or another, needs to have training. Probably most need some sort of continual training. Employers needed to be acclimated to their job. They need to be aware of the skills that are required. They need to know the way the employer wants to do things. And employers, regardless of their time with the company, need to be trained to perform to their employer's desired level of efficiency, and also develop or be aware of an attitude that's required for their job. Now, knowing when training is needed is certainly a challenge for an employer, and knowing how to deliver sufficient training would seem to be even a bigger challenge. Do you think most retailers recognize these needs sufficiently?
I think they recognize the need. I mean, it starts with business goals. Every business has its own goals and strategies, and as part of that, people have to do things to achieve those goals, which immediately brings you back to the skills of the people you have in your organization, whether they're skills you hired or skills you developed during orientation or develop on a continuing basis. So I think inherently people understand the need for skill development, which we'll call training. What they often don't understand is how to get good training that's going to deliver results and be worth the investment they're going to make in time or maybe money to implement that training.
It seems to me just a lot of organizations, a lot of employers sort of seem to skip over that to me. I can't imagine that there's training. A lot of people that I'll talk with and you talk with, whether it's in the floor covering business or otherwise, the way somebody reacts to you, answers your questions on the telephone, I think, nobody ever told them the proper way to do anything. I wonder, do most employers recognize the need for training, even basic training?
I believe they do recognize the need. Their dilemma is they don't know where to get good training, or they've had a lot of inferior training themselves, and so they're skeptical of the potential benefits of training. Is it training that's going to deliver results? Is it really training or just somebody giving you a speech? Is it training that's the right training based on the specific needs of your organization and your people? Those are the questions that need to be addressed. I certainly, in my work as a trainer, encounter those questions frequently, and I'm always facing the issue of, I've had bad training. How are you different? What are you going to do that's going to deliver results for my business? Those are the questions I think that the owners of the business need to be asking themselves.
Of course, the people that don't have training you probably don't ever talk to, and they don't ever see the need, perhaps.
That could be, and yet they wonder why their results aren't improving. Well, when everybody's doing the same thing the way they did it over the last 20 years in today's market, that may not be a formula for success.
I'll pull up to a drive-in window at a restaurant, and the person really has no clue how to interface with the customer. I mean, it's very simple. I suspect that all of these fast food places have some sort of training, but maybe they don't. I don't know. But it seems like initial training like that, okay, here's the way we do things, here's the way we expect you to act, etc., that would seem to be a basic for every employee everywhere.
Yeah, you're right about the fast food restaurants, Dave. All fast food restaurants have training programs for their employees. And yet you go to different chains and you'll get different customer service experiences. What's going on? Well, what you're seeing is poor performance in some cases from the employees. Performance may be a function of they don't know how, they don't have the skills, or it may be they're not motivated to perform. Those are two different questions. In fact, that's at the heart of a first conversation with a potential client of mine when they say, we've got a performance problem. Our business isn't meeting goals. We have a training problem. It may not be a training problem. It may be a motivational problem. The research says that there are three factors that determine whether training really delivers results. One is the design of the training. Is it a good, effective training program on the right skills? But equally important are what the supervisor says and does before the training to market it and get people receptive, and after the training to mentor, to coach, to expect people to do what they've been trained to do. If you don't have those motivational factors in place, your training may not be effective either. So those are all important considerations when thinking about, is training something I need to do for my employees to get better business results?
So if the employer, the supervisor, doesn't act like they take it seriously, certainly the person that was trained isn't going to pay much attention.
Sure. If the supervisor says before the training, go to this training, you've probably heard it before, but at least they have good cookies, Yeah, I don't want to waste too much of your time. It'll only be an hour. That sets a certain mindset or expectation. If after the training, the supervisor says, I know you've been trained to meet the needs of the customer, but I've got 3 rolls of a beige texture in the back that we have to move in the next 3 weeks. I don't care what the customer wants, sell that texture. Well, then why did you bother with the training?
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a supervisor needs some training as well.
Well, it's an important factor, excuse me, in training design to make sure you not only train the person in the class, but also help the supervisor with expectations. Here's what your people have been trained to do. Here's what you should look for. Here's what you should do if you see it. Here's what you should do if you don't see it. That's an important part of training as well, the coaching aspect.
And I guess, the whole basic idea of training, and I'm sure there's great programs and there's poor programs and everything in between, but is what do you expect from employees? What do you expect to happen in terms of efficiency? And that's really training is getting everybody lined up in the same direction and causing whatever you do to do it as efficiently as possible. I just get the idea from observing a lot of organizations that a lot of people don't necessarily see it that way. They see maybe training as an unnecessary expense.
Well, it's definitely an expense, but if you look at it as an investment, you may have a different point of view. If you had an investment that you were certain was going to return 100% of the amount you invested within a year, you would go and find the money to make that investment. If you're not quite so sure, you may not. Well, the same is true of training. And you use the metaphor getting everybody lined up the right direction. A critical factor in the success of training is, are you targeting the right skills, the ones that are needed by the staff? And so an important part of a trainer's role is to interview the owners of the business. What are your goals and what specific skills do your people need to help you meet your goals? Then you develop the training program to deliver those skills, rather than a blanket training program that may or may not hit the mark based on what you need.
Yeah.
Your market, your staff, your offering to your marketplace, they should define the training you need, not blanket programs.
It would seem to me that most companies, even though they see the need for certain kinds of training, are inadequate. Now, obviously the people you work with are not, because they hire you. So
they recognize the need, and they bring somebody in to help them deliver.
But I would suspect, talking to somebody who has never had a professional trainer come in, it would be relatively hard sell, unless they see, unless they're seeing a loss factor or something that they see as obviously inadequate.
Yeah, on the retail floor, you're trained to find out what the needs of the customer are and then deliver solutions. Well, the same is true in my business. An important part of what I do is the initial consulting with a potential client about what they need and the specific behaviors that they think their people need. Are they hiring those skills? Are they training those skills? Do they need continuing development of those skills, growth of those skills? Then you put together a design and the training program to deliver those needs. In the past, if they've not done it that way, training may or may not have hit the mark, and they may have a bad taste in their mouth about training because it didn't work. Yeah. Tried that 5 times and it didn't work. We've all heard that.
We had talked about initial training. Somebody comes in, even if they're somebody who has a lot of experience, does the employer assume that they have acquired skills up to a certain level? I know you test them. They certainly maybe are not aware of the way this particular company operates. But how do you deal with something like that?
A lot of owners like to hire experience. But the first question you need to ask yourself is, why is that person available and looking for work? Are you hiring good experience, or are you hiring somebody else's problem? And so I think starting with your customer base and how you want to meet the needs of the customer, you can define the skill set your employees need. And not every employee should have exactly the same skills. Maybe you need a little diversity on your staff because your customer base is diverse. Then you go out and you hire the skills you can, and if there's still gaps versus what your people need, then you train to fill the gaps. That's a good way to proceed. And it's also a good idea to hire a mix of experience and inexperience. Maybe hire people who don't have flooring experience but great customer service skills. Yeah. You can teach them about how to sell carpet or wood or stone, but they have the customer relationship skills you don't have to teach. That's also a very valid hiring strategy.
It seems like a good training program might also include hiring people, to to do just what you said.
Absolutely. And you can train internally. You have people who have good skills. They can teach the other people on your staff what they do, how they do it, so everybody improves. A rising tide lifts all boats. You try that strategy.
Yeah.
But you have to be careful that those people aren't using the same techniques and skills they used 20 years ago, and maybe that's not what you want your people to learn. You know, we've all heard of old Harry, who's been around for 30 years, and he tells the new guy, yeah, I know what the boss told you, but you just listen to me. I know what really goes on around here and how to be successful. That may or may not be your path to success with new employees.
Yeah, he could perhaps have done the same bad, performance, the bad traits 20 years.
It's possible. You have to monitor it. That's one of the jobs, and that's why coaching was something I emphasized earlier.
Yeah.
Pay attention to what your people are actually doing. Confirm and support the things you like and fix the things that aren't quite right. And a good training program will give the owner some tips on how to do that.
It seems like coaching, that would almost seem to be the most important element. It's one thing getting you off on the right foot, but keeping you there would seem to be the hard part.
And improving, right?
Improving, exactly right.
Andy Murray just won the British Open at Wimbledon, but he has a coach. He's the best tennis player in the world, and he has a coach because he wants to continue to improve because his competition is improving. And so the same applies here. Coaching is a very important variable.
I gotcha. Now, a lot of retailers, and I suspect everybody else, they pride themselves on having good service. And that's really, for most independent retailers, that's really what differentiates them from the big box player. And I think it seems like training is really the way, it would seem to me, to deliver that exceptional service. Do you think most retailers see the need for training in terms of delivering that exceptional service?
I think, again, they see the need. They may not know how to deliver that. Everybody believes they have great service. No retailer goes out there and says, buy from me because our service is average. And we always have great service. But finding the right customer service skills that you need to be successful, and then training so that people actually deliver those skills, and third, coaching when you see them or don't see them, those all will help you improve your customer service to the marketplace. And that is a differentiator between are you making a sale and are you not.